I now call the Shadow Minister, Gareth Davies.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. It's a great pleasure to wind up this debate on behalf of the official opposition. I want to pay tribute and thank all colleagues from all sides of the House for their contributions today, and I'll try and touch on some of the points as I go through, as I say, on behalf of the opposition. Madam Deputy Speaker, just 9 months ago I opened the second reading of a Conservative national insurance bill which cut taxes for millions of working people across the country. Today we have before us a Labour national insurance bill which takes the tax burden to the highest levels in history on the backs of working people. That's the stark difference a Labour government makes. But it's not the change that people voted for. 9 months ago, the Minister told the House in the debate that the then opposition supported our tax cut. But barely 3 hours later, she and her Labour colleagues remarkably failed to vote for it and back up their words with actions. And now we know why. Madam Deputy Speaker, it is Labour's playbook to say one thing as loudly as possible and then do the exact opposite as quietly as they can.
I thank my honourable friend for giving way. Does he think it's very concerning on the government's tax policy when today the Chancellor refused to rule out further tax rises in the future budgets?
Well, I think that's absolutely right. We all heard what was said at the CBI conference, and it's quite remarkable that the Prime Minister won't back up her words, and it was even more remarkable that the Chancellor wouldn't back up her own words today at Treasury questions. And the British people see this bill for what it is. It's the biggest broken promise of them all, and there's plenty of them to choose from. It's a good job the Chancellor has experience on a complaints desk because, quite frankly, there's quite a lot coming in at the moment, not least from the business community, as my honourable friend for South Shropshire in his great speech highlighted so well. Before the election, the Chancellor embarked on what she referred to as the smoked salmon offensive with British business. Now the election is over, she's dropped the smoked salmon, and it's all about focusing on just being offensive. Today's bill will see tax rises on working people in business that were never declared before the election. And it's a double whammy, as the Federation of Small Business have said in Lincolnshire. Not just the rate rise, but a reduction in the threshold too. Absolutely. This tax is the only major tax that is exclusively paid by working people. It is a £25 billion tax rise on jobs. The OBR makes it clear that by 2027, 76% of the total cost of this tax increase will be passed on to working people through lower wages and higher prices, as the honourable gentleman for Angus and Perthshire Glens made in his, what I thought was a very thoughtful speech for the SNP. As I said in Treasury questions this morning, let me just set this out. Let me just get this right. The OBR say this is a tax on working people. The IFS say this is a tax on working people. The Resolution Foundation, even the Resolution Foundation, say this is a tax on working people. By anyone's measure, be in no doubt, this is a manifesto breach the public will not forget. So that's clear. But what's not so clear anymore, I'm afraid, is what this Labour Party stands for. The budget was not just an attack on working people, but the very lowest paid working people, according to the IFS. This is a fundamentally regressive policy, leaving many out in the cold, giving businesses no choice but to freeze hiring and freeze wages. And it will hit others too. It will hit the doctors and the nurses working within general practice and social care, as my right honourable friend for East Hampshire set out in his speech. It will hit charities and voluntary organisations too. Marie Curie expects that it will cost them £3 million next year alone, all part of a £1.4 billion bombshell to hit all charities next year. Hospices, homeless support groups, disability charities, all warning they face reducing headcount and limiting services. This is not what the British people voted for.
Is he concerned, as he's summing up, is he concerned, as many on these benches are, that the reason the government won't give full detail of the compensation to non-core public sector activities that are the lifeblood of the NHS is because if they did give them the compensation that they need, the net benefit from this tax would be so risibly small as to demonstrate it's utterly pointless and that only a concoction that would come from a dysfunctional treasury like that one?
Really nothing to add, and he made this point in his speech. He made it at Treasury Questions, and I think it is a very important one that he makes, Madam Deputy Speaker. In just 6 months, we've hit the highest tax burden in history. Debt is up. Debt interest payments are above £100 billion, the first time ever, in every year of the forecast. And today's bill, as I say, will result in lower wages, higher prices and a tougher employment market. Absolutely. I urge this government to reverse course, but I won't hold my breath. Instead, I think I can predict what the Minister is going to say. She's going to say 3 things when she stands up to speak. The first, she's going to try and blame the Conservative Party, blaming everybody else for this clear political choice. She won't explain the £8 billion on GB Energy, an energy company that won't actually reduce bills or produce any energy. £10 billion on public pay splurges that come with no reform, no productivity whatsoever. £7 billion on rebranding the National Infrastructure Bank. Maybe if they dropped these pet projects, these choices that won't actually grow the economy, they'd have a little bit more money to not have to screw with small businesses and make people unemployed. Second thing that she's going to say, she'll forget that she's in government and that I'm in opposition. She'll start trying to ask me what my party would do instead. To this, I simply say that we would fund the NHS well, but we would also reform it. But we would also...
Look at the numbers. Look at the numbers.
The Labour... Please.
Would the Shadow Minister increase borrowing? Would the Shadow Minister instead increase a different tax? Or are there some public spending cuts that he would like to announce today?
Pay attention.
I hope the British people are listening to this. None of those things.
Absolutely.
I will remind the honourable gentleman, although he wasn't here, the NHS spending increased by 45% in the last Parliament in cash terms under a Conservative government. The issue is not about spending. The Labour Party will never get this. It is about reforming it, as my honourable friend for Bromsgrove said. It's about growing our economy faster than the Labour Party would grow, according to the OBR. As my honourable friend for the Isle of Wight East said, we would tackle the welfare bill, £12 billion of savings that we set out in government, and we would boost productivity. Absolutely. Because if public sector productivity was returned to pre-pandemic levels, £20 billion would be saved. Wow. Finally, she will try and suggest that she's bringing stability, even though businesses and consumer confidence have plummeted ever since she and her colleagues have taken office. Let's remind ourselves of what she means by stability. In just a few months, we have seen a Downing Street Chief of Staff sacked, a Cabinet Minister resign, a backbench MP quit the party, key manifesto promises like cutting energy bills by £300 completely dropped, a delayed spending review, fiddled fiscal rules, and just this week, complete confusion as to whether the Prime Minister will drop his economic growth pledge. Madam Deputy Speaker, it is all so predictable and yet so damaging for our economy. This bill breaks Labour's manifesto. We cannot back it. We will not vote for it. We urge them to think again.